So we have covered many parties on this channel so far, some based on core policy, and some built off the backs of single MPs. But today we're going to look at a party based on identity and designed to be the voice of 17% of the population. Today we're going to do a deep dive into Te Pāti Māori. The Māori Party is the youngest party that currently holds seats in New Zealand's parliament, being founded as recently as 2005. But they have had a big effect on how the government manages race relations and how the government has functioned as a whole.
I can smell the uranium on it as you lean towards it.
Okay, Boomer.
We have the most enormous big gay rainbow across my electorate.
They're not going to win an election.
Let's keep moving!
The Māori people are the indigenous people of New Zealand, who were met with animosity from British settlers in the 17 and 1800s. This animosity was settled in 1840, when the Treaty of Waitangi was signed, a document that was supposed to come to an arrangement of land sharing between the British and the Māori people. This is the founding document of New Zealand, but from the outset it was a rocky relationship. The translations were incorrect from the Māori and the English versions of the document, meaning both sides were not actually agreeing on what they were signing on to. This led to more animosity and fighting, including conflicts like the New Zealand Land Wars. But this is just background for the idea of Indigenous rights and co-governance. I'll probably do a full video on the settlement of New Zealand in the future. Just understand that the treaty basically left native property rights intact in some aspects around New Zealand, which would be disputed for years to come. Now I do want to take a second to acknowledge that I'm a white guy, telling the story of the Māori Party. I'm looking at the party from a historical and political perspective. I could never truly grasp the culture or the sense of community or the whakapapa involved in a movement such as the Māori Party, but I will do my best. So in 1997, there was a High Court case where a iwi claimed to own a section of the foreshore and seabed in the Marlborough Sounds, as they claimed that it was customary land used to bring in waka and collect food. They claimed that the treaty did not extinguish this ownership, and as the Crown had an explicit stance that all coasts and waterways would have public access, no one proudly owned any of the foreshore in New Zealand. The court ruled in favour of the Crown, claiming that Māori rights had been extinguished, but the Court of Appeal overruled this claim, and that it was possible for the iwi to claim this, and essentially told the Māori Land Court to deal with it. This was a ruling that allowed the iwi to pursue the issue further in court, but many experts saw this as a possibility that not only could the Indigenous New Zealanders claim the foreshore and seabed in the Marlborough Sounds, but the entire foreshore and seabed of the entire country could be claimed by various iwis. This led to outrage in the Pākehā community, fearmongering that Māori would ban access to beaches and waterways.
For every Kiwi, no matter what the background, what's been traditional is to wander down to the beach and be able to take you for your pippy.
The government run by Labour's Helen Clark stepped up and said that the government would pass legislation to give the Crown full ownership of the foreshore and seabed. Now, regardless of what you think of the prospect of Māori having land rights to the entire foreshore and seabed, this was straight up Indigenous land confiscation in the 21st century. The court could rule that Māori had customary rights over this land, and without purchase or agreement, the government was going to decree that it was now theirs. They were going to confiscate it. This was an outrage and led to protests by the Māori community around New Zealand. The Foreshore and Seabed Act was authored, legislation that would extinguish Māori land rights in the foreshore and seabed. Now, Labour was supposed to be a left-wing party that fought for Indigenous rights, and they clearly were not doing that, as it seems that the Māori community were not on board with this legislation. The Labour Party currently held all 7 of the Māori electorate seats, who were supposed to represent the Māori community, who were all expected to vote for this legislation. Tariana Turia, a minister in Helen Clark's cabinet, and the MP for the Te Taiahoruru Māori electorate, was open about her dislike for the legislation and even discussed that she wanted to vote against it. This led to turmoil in the Labour caucus, with meeting after meeting to try to convince Turia to vote for the legislation. There was a famous instance where Clark ordered Turia to leave a meeting in the back of a car, with her head down so the media wouldn't see her. This was seen as very disrespectful by Clark. The Clark government decided to let Turia abstain from the vote, and watch the legislation pass, as Labour had the votes to pass the legislation without her, as the New Zealand First Party was going to support this legislation as well as the government. But Turia couldn't. She stated that she intended to vote against the bill, and quit the Labour Party altogether. The day she quit the Labour Party, it was the same day that Helen Clark fired Turia from all her cabinet positions.
Losing Tariana Turia, that must have been a big blow.
Yeah, it was sad, because I'd worked very closely with Tariana, but, you know, those are the breaks.
Turia tried to convince other members of the Māori caucus to leave as well, but they would not. There are various reasons for why the Māori caucus stayed, a reason I asked John Tameheri, who was a member of that very Labour caucus.
a number of us considered going across to the Māori Party. And there was pressure on us for us to do that. But the problem we had in our constitution at the time was Winston Peters had 13 MPs. We had 7 that were prepared to act as a bloc. So even if all 7 walked, Peters had the opportunity to ram through legislation nullifying Māori rights to foreshore and seabed anyway.
I could have walked away and been a hero with Tariana. I didn't do that. We had to stay and hold the fort, and that's what the Māori members in Labour did. And we had to get the best possible result for our people. That's what we did. If we'd have walked away, we'd have been looking at a lot worse. And you go down to politics to do the business. You don't go down there to be loved and respected and to tell people what they want to hear.
But frankly, it had seemed that Helen Clark had offered promotions to the other 6 Māori MPs of the caucus to toe the party line.
How close did you get to joining Tariana Turia?
Not at all.
Now, Tariana Turia was an independent MP with no party affiliation and was allowed to finish her term in Parliament, which would expire in late 2005. But Turia was not pleased to just keep her seat. She intended to force a by-election to return to the people of Te Haururu so that she may receive a fresh mandate to govern. Many people, especially the Labour Party, ridiculed Turia for this, calling it a stunt and claiming it was a waste of taxpayers' money to call a by-election just a year out from the next general election. But Turia felt that she could not respect herself in Parliament if her people did not support her position as a separate entity from the Labour Party. While Turia was making her plans for her future in Parliament, there were hui all across the country where Māori protested against the Foreshore and Seabed Act and the confiscation of Māori land. This was led by various Māori community leaders, most notably Te Aruru Flavel, Peter Sharples, and Hone Harawira. These Māori leaders led demonstrations all over the country, which culminated in Hone Harawira's massive march from Northland to Wellington, where 15,000 protesters took to the streets in New Zealand's capital.
Don't you bloody legislate!
When the protesters got to the Beehive, all the Labour Party and Māori MPs gathered to welcome them, as these were their people who were protesting, their constituents. These Labour MPs included John Tamihere, expected by many to one day lead the Labour Party and become New Zealand's first Māori Prime Minister, and Ngāti Mahuta, who you may recognise as being a very prominent Labour MP and minister. Te Urura Flavel gave a moving speech to the thousands who gathered, and afterwards the Māori Labour MPs expected to have a chance to speak. Hone Harawira, however, snatched away the microphone, saying to the faces of the 6 Māori MPs, "Fuck the lot of you. You had your chance, and none of you had the guts to speak up against this legislation, so you ain't speaking today. Damn." With the swell of support from these Māori-led protesters, Tariana Turia formed the Māori Party, with her as the sole candidate, and ran for re-election on the 27th of July 2004. Where she won an insane 92% of the vote in her electorate. This was mainly because no major party actually ran a campaign against her, as the general election was so close, but she did receive the mandate that she wanted. This showed her community had swelled around her and gave her the mandate to go back to Parliament to be the first MP for the Māori Party.
You know, we've had just the most amazing people who have supported us right from the time that I stepped out, and I want to mihi to all of you, because you're the people who had the courage to give me courage to make the right decision to leave. And, you know, it wasn't really a hard thing to do, but just knowing that all of you were behind me, that you trusted me, that this is what you wanted for us as a people, made it all the more important that this was the pathway forward for us as tangata whenua, and I believe that today as much as I believed it the day when I walked from Labour. The day will come, and in the not too distant future, when our people will have enough faith in themselves to believe in themselves that they can be strong and independent people, and they don't need to be contained and constrained by a political party continuing to come out and tell them that they will do for them. Those days are over.
But all these protests and Turia's resignation did not deter the government. The Foreshore and Seabed Act passed its third reading, with 66 votes to 44 votes, with Tariana Turia voting against the legislation. The election of 2005 soon approached, and the Māori Party formed its official platform. Tariana Turia approached community leader Peter Sharples and requested that he take up a co-leader position in the party with her, similar to how the Green Party ran their party. This was not only because Sharples was an excellent communicator who could help sell the message of the party, but he could also speak Te Reo Māori fluently, something that Turia could not do. She felt it was not fair for her to be the sole leader of an Indigenous party, with the leader not even knowing how to speak the native language of the Maori people. Sharp was accepted.
Kei ngā mana, kei ngā reo, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. I greet you here today on behalf of the Māori Party, the party that is going to transform the political landscape of Aotearoa.
The party decided to contest every single Māori electorate, putting forward 7 candidates to contest them. Now, if you're like Mike Hosking here, you might not understand how the Māori electorate seats work.
You can't vote for the Māori Party because you're not enrolled in the Māori electorate, so what are you going to do now? I'm joking.
I'm like, what are you even talking about?
Some people believe that it gives Māori an extra vote or something like that. But no, not at all. In New Zealand, you get 2 votes, for your electorate vote and your party vote. The electorate vote is for your MP to represent your local community, such as Chloe Swarbrick is the MP for Auckland Central, because she won the most votes in that electorate with the electorate vote. Well, there is something called the Māori roll, a way for Māori voters to essentially opt out of their local electorate and vote within the Māori electorates. So instead of someone voting in the Auckland Central electorate, they would vote in the Tamaki Makaurau electorate. This is a controversial setup, which I will touch on later, but by all means it does not give Māori any extra votes. The Māori Party candidates were chosen in huis in every Māori electorate, allowing the people to decide who should represent them. The election would be a battle for these 7 seats between the Māori Party and the Labour Party, who currently held all of the Māori electorates, other than Turi's of course. Labour saw themselves as the natural party for the Māori voter, so they wanted to crush the Māori Party in this upcoming election, to stomp out any idea that Labour was not the home for Māori. Labour was not the only foe for the Māori Party movement.
In this country, it should not matter what colour you are, or what your ethnic origin might be.
The National Party had been taking a bolder and bolder stance against Māori rights since electing their new party leader, Dr. Don Brash. Brash was infamous for his one law for all policy, basically dog whistling against Māori rights and claiming that Māori actually had it legally better than Pākehā. He wanted an end to the Māori electorates, literally the very thing that would make the Māori Party movement viable.
I worry that we started the last 6 years with separate Maori seats. We've had those almost 140 years. We now have separate Maori wards in local government. We have separate Maori representation in district health boards and primary health organisations. That's the trend I worry about.
When the government was formed in this country, we were the majority, and so they put rules in place to deny us participation, gave us 4 seats. Now we are participating, still not at the level that we should be, and they want to take that away from us as well.
In terms of the Maori seats, are you committed to keeping them?
I want to abolish them.
This made both big parties pretty hostile towards the Māori Party coming up to the election. Even though the average Māori voter seemed to lean left-wing, the Māori Party did not run an openly left-wing campaign, only running Māori-centric policies, not traditional for any other party at the time, who you could clearly classify as left-wing, right-wing, or maybe centrist.
A lot of people would expect you to align yourselves with Labour in that your co-leader, Tariana Turia, is a former Labour MP.
Yes.
A lot of your policies are on that sort of socialist end of the scale. Do you lean towards Labour as a potential coalition partner?
We lean towards ourselves, really. It's very hard to get this across to the general public that we don't see ourselves as a right or left thing. We see ourselves as a Māori thing. A Māori thing that's good for New Zealand, going up the middle, if you like. And some of our things are quite clearly in Labour's court, and other things are quite clearly in National's court.
The Māori Party ran a good campaign with a concept that the ACT Party has used well in the past and was using in 2005 as well, with a 2-for-1 policy. With how MMP works in New Zealand, if a candidate in an electorate for one of the top 2 parties doesn't win their seat, there's a good chance that they're probably going to receive a seat through the party vote, as long as they have a high enough number on the party list. The Māori Party went to the voters and said, why vote for Labour in this electorate when their candidate is going to get on through the party vote? Get 2 Māori MPs for your community in Parliament for the price of 1.
They've got 2 votes, and we've only campaigned for candidate vote for Māori up and down the country to get our liberated voice in. And so I just think our people will vote smart. They have done before, 96, they went back 99, they've shown it in 2005. So they're pretty smart, you know, and so they know Penny's in, they know Martima's in. So we'll just see how this thing pans out.
The sensible thing for people in HANA-RAWHITI to do is get 2 for the price of 1.
This was an excellent strategy if you were able to communicate to the voters well, which is difficult, because this was the early days of MMP, when people didn't really understand MMP. Hell, people don't understand MMP now. The problem the party had is it did not have a clear message on who it would support in the upcoming government. Its official stance was it could work with any party that would help them achieve their policy outcomes, but sometimes their candidates would mention Turia and Helen Clarke having this strained relationship, or outright calling Don Brash a racist for his one law for all policies.
Pete talking about Labour, Tari talking about National, and their president, Whatuwiniata, saying there's no way they should go into any deal. And so you've got the three chiefs all with different views, and I don't think that's good just 2 or 3 weeks out from an election. I think someone needs to shut up. It will scare some Māori, any relationship with National. The reality is that the Māori Party has to be very, very careful before it gets into a relationship with National.
In a debate between Helen Clarke and Don Brash, they were asked if either party could work with the Māori Party. Brash said that they wouldn't give in on policy, so if the Māori Party were okay with supporting a party who wanted to eradicate the Māori electorates, or wanted to abolish all legal separate protections for Māori, then they could technically work together. Helen Clarke said it was unlikely that they could work together, saying that the Māori Party were the last cab off the rank for coalition talks. Clarke made it clear that she would work with a centrist United Future Party or the nationalistic New Zealand First Party before even considering working with Turia again. So even though the Māori Party claimed that Brash had racist policies, they began to lay the groundwork for a potential coalition with National. Even though the polls showed that the average Māori voter seemed to support the idea of a Labour-led government, not National. Any deal with National could seem as the party is abandoning the voters' wishes. As stated by a Māori Party candidate, any sort of move towards going with National kills this party dead. The election came around, and the Māori Party won 4 out of the 7 Māori electorates.
Looks as though we're doing really well on 4 of the seats. 3 of the seats, not so well. And we'll wait till the end of the night to see how well we've done on all of them, Mark.
I mean, obviously you're going to have a much bigger presence in Parliament than you've had there on your own during the tail end of this last term.
Absolutely. Any progress is positive.
It doesn't come as a surprise to you. It was always felt they were going to take possibly a handful of seats.
Oh, absolutely, and I think this is the real story of the night, apart from the major battle that's going on between National and Labour. This is something new, and the way that the Māori Party has been able to claim even 4 and possibly more seats is a truly, ground-shifting event in terms of New Zealand politics.
What is that being fought on? Is it the ideas they like seeing from the Māori Party, the representation, or they just so hosed off with Labour?
Look, no, they're very hosed off with Labour. That's the reality. Look, the foreshore issues sparked this.
We've created history. We're really proud of that. 4 seats after just 15 months. So we think we've done extremely well.
This was an exceptional showing for a new party. Even Peter Sharples defeating prominent Labour Minister John Tamaheri.
But what's your feel? I mean, have you got the seat?
Oh, I've got butterflies in my stomach.
Tamaheri had decided not to run on the party list, trying to fight against the notion of the 2-for-1 policy, but he struck out and did not retain his seat at all.
John, I think a lot of people, particularly Maori people, will be looking at this battle tonight and thinking it is so sad that one of these guys is going to be out of Parliament. Why didn't you go up on Labour's list?
No, I've got a very aggressive and assertive campaign to accelerate Māori growth, and a number of our people don't like hearing the message, but you need their mandate to apply the policy. So I've never been on the list, and I've seen the requirement to take your people with you if you can be their advocate. And I just think that's fair, and I think that's principle. Some people might see it as politically stupid, but that's the way it is. Look, this is the end, John, of your career in Parliament. Yes, that's right. And the people from Tamaki Makaurau have spoken. And I just wanted to congratulate Peter and the Māori Party and his team in the electorate. They're all over us like a rash. And so good luck, God bless them. High expectations to meet. But I'll tell you what, this is a wonderful liberation and relief for Tamaheri on the way out. Is this the end of politics for you, John? I mean, can we expect to see you back again? Oh, no, you never say never.
In addition to Turia and Peter Sharples getting a seat, Te Aurora Flabel and Hone Harawira both won their seats too. This gave them 4 seats in Parliament. As a side note, the party only received 2.1% of the party vote. which actually only gave them enough party seats for 3 seats. So something called an overhang seat came into play. This means that the Māori Party could keep all 4 of their seats that they had won, but their 4th seat would be added to the total number of allotted seats in Parliament, meaning that there would be 121 seats opposed to the usual 120. This is the first time that New Zealand had ever had an overhang seat in Parliament. This election was also notable for having the highest seat count ever awarded to third parties, with 2 clear factions emerging: Labour, the Greens and the Progressive Party having 57 seats, and National ACT having 50 seats. There were 3 parties stuck in the middle: New Zealand First, United Future and the Māori Party. Parties that could all technically go with either faction. There was a meeting between Don Brash, the Māori Party, ACT Party, United Future and New Zealand First, and it seemed possible that they could all work together to make Don Brash the Prime Minister, with Brash basically agreeing to drop the anti-Māori policies to get the Māori Party on their side. But it was not to be, as Labour did a sneaky manoeuvre, as they promised to leave the radical, left-wing Green Party out of the government and to get support from the United Future and the New Zealand First Party. A side note, if my math is correct, the Labour Party had the numbers to form a government with the Greens, Progressive and the Māori Party, which would have been a stronger left-wing bloc than having to deal with 2 basically right-wing parties like United Future and New Zealand First. But this just shows how Helen Clark could not work with Tariana Turia. Regardless, the Māori Party's 4 MPs went to Parliament, finally giving an independent voice for Māori in New Zealand. And it started off with a bang. When Parliament opened in 2006, Hone Harawira got up and sang a mihi, a traditional Māori greeting, as he thought that it was a fitting way to open Parliament, as opposed to the traditional Western process. This was evident of the party being unapologetically Māori, pushing their heritage, their culture, into the public eye. Hone was reprimanded for his outburst by Parliament, and even the Māori Party itself. But yet, in future Parliaments to come, a mihi was adopted to open Parliament, frankly one of the first wins for the party, bringing this Māori custom into Parliament. The Māori Party's first term was in opposition, but they pushed their policies anyway, including a members' bill that would completely repeal the Foreshore and Seabed Act, but their bill was dead on arrival. The party could put their policies out there, but without executive power, there'd be no way for them to pass their legislation. As the 2008 election loomed, it seemed that National had the support to win, with their new leader John Key. And just like Brash before him, Key publicly suggested that maybe the Māori Party could work with National in the upcoming government.
I will form a government with ACT and with United and with the Māori Party if they're interested in talking to us on the terms and conditions that we can meet.
Boy, the Māori Party are playing this shrewdly, aren't they? Because the fact that a national leader is sitting here talking about having post-election negotiations with a Māori political party would have been impossible to pick not very long ago.
In addition, the National Party had softened their Māori rights policies, not calling for a one law for all or wanting to abolish the Māori seats anymore. The Māori Party stated they would not accept any deals before the election, that they would go back to their voters after the election and ask them what sort of coalition agreement that they would support.
And we'll go back to our voters, to our constituency, to those who've joined up to the party, and they'll give us a steer on what it is that they think is on the table from both of these parties.
The Māori Party had turned their eyes to the other 3 electorate seats that they had not won in 2005, hoping to pick up all 7. The most likely chance was for their new candidate Derek Fox to win his race in Ngarewa-Packer. Fox was a famous TV broadcaster and well-known Māori activist. He'd previously run in that electorate as an independent in 1999 and came very close to winning, making it likely that with the support from these other Māori leaders, he could win that seat.
In the east, a battle is brewing between Māori Party candidate Derek Fox and incumbent Parekura Horomia. Both are sons of Ngāti Porou and close relations. Parekura's held Ngarewa-Packer for 9 years. Derek's been broadcasting Māori issues to the world for 40 years. He pioneered the country's first ever Māori language news program, Te Karere, and people know who he is. Derek's high profile could work 2 ways, to the party's advantage or to their detriment. They know it's going to be a hard one to win.
He brought some notoriety to the race, and it seemed like he could win.
Derek would be an enormous benefit to any parliament. And given that the party is going to be there anyway, the sensible thing for people in Ngarewa-Packer to do is get 2 for the price of 1.
But there was a scandal. It came out that 30 years prior he received a conviction for domestic abuse against his wife. The party stood by him, claiming that the situation had been dealt with. But this was a big blow to the campaign. The big question was who would the Māori Party support in a coalition? who would the party go with? Which they would always respond, who would go with us? A partnership is supposed to be an agreement where both parties get something and there is an exchange. Yet in politics, people expect small parties to give their support to the larger parties, while the Māori Party wanted policy concessions in exchange for their support.
We'd be stupid to write off the possibility of a Māori Party-Labour relationship. Our people have been Labour voters, mai rāno, until the Māori Party started.
Māori people say we should be hanging with Labour. They should be saying to Labour, Labour, what are you offering the Māori Party to come across to you? And the answer is they're offering us a knife in the back. To be very careful if they get into a deal with National, but they must not rule it out.
I will say this, if the Maori Party will not go into coalition government with National, if I'm proved wrong after the election, I'll print out this blog and eat it live on webcam.
And the polls tightened between Labour and National, and it seemed everyone wanted support of the Māori Party. 26 days before the election, Labour announced that they would consider entrenching the Māori seats, making it very hard for future politicians to abolish them, like Dornbrash had wanted in 2005.
Helen Clark has had a major change of heart on the future of the Māori seats, saying they do now need to be entrenched. Just a week ago she said they didn't. National says it's a shameless attempt to kiss the Māori Party's bottom line.
I have absolutely no difficulty with entrenching these seats. It's the position we took in 2001. I've been back and looked at the provisions. I frankly think it is an inequity that those provisions are not entrenched.
National also turned around and said abolishing the Māori seats was not a bottom line policy and could even be convinced to entrench the Māori seats.
Rodney Hyde, if, say, for instance, John Key was trying to form a coalition with ACT, with Peter Dunn, and he's trying to woo the Māori Party, would you accept entrenching those seats as the price to pay?
Absolutely.
This is how powerful the Māori Party's voting bloc was, with both large parties wanting their support now. Helen Clark now backtracking from her last cab off the rack comments, desperate to stay in power.
The debate 3 years ago, you stood here and I asked you about the Māori Party, and you said they're last cab off the rank. Are they, as Honi Harawira says now, in the limousine at the front?
Look, we have spent the last 3 years
the electorate bus,
talking on many issues with the Māori Party, and obviously post-election, if they're in Parliament, we're likely to be speaking with them and working with them again.
The election came around, and not only did the Māori Party hold on to all 4 of their seats by healthy margins, but they also won a surprise win in Te Taitonga that the polling suggested that they were not likely to win.
But the shock surprises in Te Taitonga. The new kid on the block, the candidate least likely to succeed, Rahu Kātene, has been victorious, and she's happy.
I think this is something that we've needed for a long time.
Derek Fox could not shake his controversies though, and did not win the electorate that the party was focusing on the most. The newly created Haraki Waikato electorate was also a very close race, the Māori Party candidate coming in 888 votes from the popular Labour MP Nanaia Hahuta. This was the closest race in the Māori electorates. This showed a hunger in the Māori electorates for the Māori Party, seeing that they stood for unapologetically Māori views. There were enough seats for National, ACT and United Future to form a government, possibly leaving the Māori Party in opposition again. But John Key and his deputy Bill English still met with Turia and Sharples.
It looks like National's going to get enough seats to govern alone. If that happens, then we're meeting tomorrow anyway and we'll decide what our options might be, and then we'll go into talks with the other parties anyway, and then we will offer our portfolio to them and say, that's us.
They discussed how they could still work together, giving National a support partner to help them with Māori constituents that don't usually support National.
I actually hope that John Key will invite the Maori Party to work with the government, because anyone that's going to succeed in this country is going to require taking Maori with them.
As well as creating a foundation for future elections where National may need the Māori Party to form a government.
Can you tell us more about John Key's reasons for wanting the Māori Party on board?
Also, there's another reason, of course, and John Key wants to win the 2011 election as well. He started that process today by bringing the the Māori Party in. We all know that National has failed to have coalition partners before, and clearly John Key is working on a long-term strategic alliance with the Māori Party, hoping that he can go to the country in 3 years with the Māori Party in the bag.
And what would the Māori Party get in return for this? They could get actual power, executive power, and the ability to actually pass legislation. The Māori Party could not accept an agreement right away, as they wanted to go back to the people and ask their voters their opinion.
Tariana Turia, very quickly, who could you work with?
Well, we've been very clear all along, John. The people who vote for us and put us into Parliament will be those who will determine who we will coalesce with.
How will you know, though? What
we will go back to them. We think it'll take 7 days, and we don't think that that's too long to entrust that vote to them.
Because your constituency, as you see it, is very defined. You understand who they are.
Absolutely.
And so through Hui or whatever, you can go back to them and talk to them and see what they want.
Absolutely.
So they set up meetings in every Māori electorate and asked the voters if they would support the party going in with National. It was a hard sell. National did not have a history of great Māori support, with Labour historically being the party of Māori rights and support. But the party explained that the Māori Party needed to support any government that would pass Māori policies. The Māori Party wanted to establish themselves as a natural coalition partner for any government, which would mean that half the time they would have to go in with National.
One day the Māori Party would be seen as a natural party of government, regardless of whether the blue were in charge or the red were in charge. And then part of that was to normalise the fact that the Māori Party could work with both sides of the House in advancing Māori interests. And therefore, we become the default proposition for the Māori caucus in National and the Māori caucus in Labour.
And after much deliberation, they got the support from their constituents. Hone Harawira is stating, "The support for the agreement is around 98%. People are wanting us to give it a shot. They're cautious, but they're saying go for it anyway."
The big question for everybody here, though, is what would you have us do? Go in opposition and just criticise? Sit in the middle and do nothing? Or try to work with government to see whether we can advance Māori interests? There's a fourth option. Split the dummy, resign and all go home. I didn't put that up in case you fellas said go that way.
If we get anything, we will take it where we can make a difference, where we can work with our people and make an impact, and that's what we hope to do.
For me, I just want to know what do you want us to do to help you?
What we need immediately is the mandate from you all to go and sign the line. But at the end of the day, somehow we have to come up with a strategy to get our people involved in the process. That's the big one, and it can't just happen from us.
Just to clarify, so there's no formal agreement with National.
Yeah.
The Māori Party is going to be the watchdog and stand alone and be independent.
If the result of these meetings is that we pursue a relationship with the government to advance Māori interests, that there will be a deal. And if there is a deal, then we will want to see a movement on the foreshore and seabed. We will want to see movement on the Māori seats, and we will want control of budgets that affect Māori interests.
So the Māori Party agreed to support the National Party alongside ACT and United Future, making John Key the Prime Minister.
The Maori Party has not gone into coalition with National. It's entered a supply and confidence agreement, and the context in which I made those remarks was that they would not choose National over Labour, and they haven't done. I mean, Labour wasn't in the picture, there was never an option, so they haven't chosen Labour, or they haven't chosen National over Labour. However, I accept that that's wriggle room, and in the interest and the spirit of fair play, make sure that I at least get this into a sense that it is edible. Cheers everybody, here's to the next 3 years of the National Māori Party, United Future, ACT, non-coalition, confidence and supply government.
From the get-go, it was clear that the Māori Party agreement was different than the ones given to the ACT and United Future parties. ACT and United Future had agreed to support specific policy initiatives, with the Māori Party agreeing to no such deal. They practice a more arm's-length relationship with the National Party, working together when they can, but having open disagreements when not. But the party got legitimate policy wins in this agreement. National promised not to touch the Māori electorate seats, as long as the Māori Party did not try to entrench them again. They also promised to review the Foreshore and Seabed Act in hopes to repeal and replace the act. The agreement also gave the Māori Party 2 out-of-cabinet minister positions for Sharples and Turia, giving them actual power in the executive branch.
It's a lot of power. Not that I was getting much. A lot of baubles that I never could, but who cares?
And because they were out of cabinet, they were not complicit with the plans and goals of National, and could pursue their own executive policies as long as they ran it past John Key or Bill English first. Their relationship seemed to be based on Turia's relationship with Bill English, who had become close friends and colleagues, who found ways to communicate and compromise even over party lines. Hone Harawira once stated, "In 3 days, National offered us more than Labour did in 3 years. As ministers, Turia and Sharples could push their policies to be enacted. It is fair to say that the biggest accomplishment during this period was the creation of Whānau Ora, a Māori health organisation, which could provide government-funded health projects to benefit Indigenous communities. This project was Turia's baby, and she became the minister in charge of running it. Another big win was the repeal of the Foreshore and Seabed Act. This was why the Māori Party got started in the first place. This was a complete win, no? Well, sort of. The bill was repealed, but then replaced with the Marine and Coastline Act of 2011. This did not just repeal the Foreshore and Seabed Act, and they replaced it with a mechanism for iwi to claim land and water rights through treaty tribunals.
What will happen through this process, and it was taken away by the previous government, is that they can go to court to explore those rights.
It certainly wasn't as restrictive as the Foreshore and Seabed Act, but it was far from giving back land rights that plenty of Māori felt had been seized off them in 2004.
How much substantially has changed about the position? It went from being Crown land to the position that no one owns it under the... And, as I say, the outcome's the same.
Many did not love this middle-of-the-road legislation, including some in the Māori Party.
Hone, you're upset, you're angry that Māori won't get Māori title. Tell us why.
Well, I think when we went into this Māori title, public access, no sale, the government very quickly took up the public access and the no sale and then denied the Māori title. They had every opportunity to do it. It was easy to do. The fact that they took the other two and refused to do the honourable thing is, I guess, what pisses me off.
Now, I think it's time we need to talk about Hone. Hone Harawira, one of the biggest voices during the Foreshore and Seabed movement, was not having a great transition into political life. Harawira was criticised for skipping taxpayer-funded events in Europe, instead travelling to France for a holiday on the taxpayer's dime. He was forced to repay the money, and he kept saying rude and offensive statements that many deemed were racist, such as saying he wouldn't want his daughter to date a white guy, and most notably, saying that he wished the Labour Party leader Phil Goff would be lined up against a wall and shot for voting for the Foreshore and Seabed Act.
I think they were silly comments to make. What we want is an apology.
And I know that my words have caused considerable damage and unnecessary harm to our relationships with other people and with other parties.
Hone's actions seem to act in complete contrast from the pragmatic approach that the Māori Party were trying to take with working with National in the first place. You could say that Hone was being unapologetic for his views and beliefs, but maybe not acting in a way that was expected for a member of parliament, or frankly, a member of a party in government. This came to a head when Hone was interviewed by the Sunday Star Times, and he was asked about voting for the new Marine and Coastline Act. If we support this bill, we're effectively saying that our coalition with National is more important than our commitment to Māori. Surely not.
The perception at the time was it's simply because you're a Labour, not a Labour supporter, but you're more partial to Labour, and therefore that's why you didn't want to...
No, didn't give a stuff about Labour. It was Labour stole it, Foreshore and Seabed, bro. So, you know, I had no truck with Labour. I just didn't want us getting too sucked into the national vortex. That's all.
And the longer it went on, the more you felt that was...
Yeah. The longer, and the more and more we seemed to be drawn into it, to a point where instead of our own people presenting policy positions to us, we were inviting people across from National Party ministers' offices to talk to us, and I'm going, why am I listening to these fucking ballheads? You know, what have they got to do? Yeah, they don't even speak. They don't understand kaupapa Māori. They don't speak Māori. They don't do nothing for me. That relationship developed to a point where we were basically being told by National
that this is the reason why you should vote for this. I used to think, hey, why are they coming to our caucus meetings? I don't listen to them dickheads.
He also wrote a column that condemned the party's closeness with National. For the party to maintain its credibility, MPs must speak out against National's anti-social initiatives. No more polite press releases that say nothing. If we can't stop them at the party or cabinet level, then we need to signal that we oppose them rigorously in the House, at the Select Committee, at the public meetings, and in the streets if necessary.
I was trying to say it internally. I expressed my concerns internally. I just didn't think they were getting listened, so I wrote an open letter to the leadership, and I put it in the media. Just saying, hey, we're getting drawn in here. That I don't think this is where our people wanted us to be. They wanted us to be in a position to be a partner in the governance of the nation, but not a lapdog.
These statements putting in doubt the hard work and rapport that the Māori Party had put forward in forming this deal with National, setting the members of the party at odds with Hone. Most notably Te Urura Flavel. Flavel was the party's whip, the third most senior member of the party, behind the two leaders, and who placed a formal complaint against Hone. Internal investigations were done in the party. It was found that all of the Māori MPs had lost trust and confidence in Hone. On the 7th of February, the Māori Party officially expelled Hone Harawira from the party, making him an independent MP. Hone initially tried to rejoin the party, but when that failed, he announced that he would make his own party, the Mana Party.
What was the point at which you knew you had to go your own way, and eventually you start your own party, obviously the Mana Party? What was the straw that broke the camel's back?
When Tari told me.
6 months before the 2011 general election, Hone resigned from Parliament, calling for a by-election in his seat of Te Tai Tokoro. He claimed that this was to give him a mandate from his people to represent them, similar to how Tariana Turia resigned from her seat and had won it for the Māori Party years back.
So I could have just comfortably sat out the backbenches and for the rest of that too. Matt says, hey, if you want to make something of yourself, you have to actually resign from Parliament and fight your way back in with your own movement. I said, why would I do that? He said, because you are making a statement of your independence and the things you believe in, and you're challenging yourself to present that message, and you're challenging your people to believe in that message.
This was criticised as the general election was so close, and the by-election was going to cost $500,000. It was also assumed that Hone did this because he would personally be given a pay rise as the leader of the party, opposed to being an independent MP. Regardless, the by-election took place and Hone won, beating out Labour's Kelvin Davis, a new MP at the time. The Māori Party also ran a new candidate against Hone Harawira, but it was clear that Hone had the support from his constituents for starting his new party. In Hone's first day back at Parliament, he was set to give the usual pledge to the Queen that all MPs were supposed to do. Instead, he spoke an alternative oath, swearing allegiance to the Treaty of Waitangi and the people of Te Tai Tokoro. He was kicked out of Parliament for the stunt.
Tui whakaharahara, engari kaore itika mai te tīmatanga. Ka taka iho te koro wai o Hone Harawira, te rāpea he tohu mō ngā mahi ka whai mai.
Ka oatia hau ki a piripono me te tino amene atu ki te Tiriti o Waitangi. Kia pono ki aro nui aku mahi. Kia ahu whakamua ai ngā tika o ngā iwi o te taitokerau. Kia whakapaua e a hau.
Order.
Aku kaha kapua.
Order. That is not the affirmation required by law. Hone Harawira will now leave the chamber and return to this chamber on a sitting day when he is prepared to make his affirmation according to the law of this land. The Hone Harawira will now leave the chamber.
Mea rawa ke.
Kia tūmotu hake.
The member will now leave the chamber.
E rangatira o tēnei whenua.
Engari mō tēnā, e ai ki te māngai whakatumatuma. E ai ki te ture me whakapūmau ngā mema pāremata katoa I te oati ki te kuini o Ingarangi. Engari pērā I ngā tau kimuri, ka whakamātau tonu ētahi ki te tuku I a rātau oati ki te tiriti o Waitangi. I te whare pāremata ngā kai tautoko I a Harawira, ka rongohia tō rātau reo taunaki.
I ask visitors please to respect this house.
Hone remarking that this is a reminder to Māori that the White Boys Colonial Club sets the rules. But now in opposition, Hone Harawira voted against the marine and coastline legislation, seemingly yet again being similar to Taira Naturia voting against the Foreshore and Seabed Act. It could be argued that Hone Harawira was standing by the principles of the party, where the Māori Party were cozying up even more to National. It didn't help that National also announced a GST increase in his budget.
Can you rule out National raising GST to 15%?
Yeah, National is not going to be raising GST. National wants to cut taxes, not raise taxes.
The government is also carefully considering a modest increase in the rate of GST to no more than 15%.
In which the Māori Party were forced to vote for, as they agreed to always vote for the budget, this regressive tax hike, yet they voted for it nonetheless. The Mana Party started to get a little traction as an unapologetically left-wing Māori party.
You can't campaign as Mana is to be the voice for the poor and then to go into coalition with a party like National and ACT, who actually build their whole philosophy around kicking the poor, taxing the poor to feed the rich. National governments and Labour governments have successively seen Māori have really bad relationships and really bad indicators in welfare, in education, in health, in justice, employment and in housing. Regardless of the fact that the Māori Party say that sitting at the table makes a difference, it's made absolutely no difference whatsoever to the status of the people of Tai Tokerau. And I think it's really important to understand that, because sitting at the table doesn't guarantee success. Being strong, being independent and being forceful in your opinions gives you the opportunity for people to hear what's important to you and to your people and to get results.
Where the Māori Party had started to get tired by their association with National, Mana was running on policies like their Feed the Kids initiative, where the Māori Party had to defend their closeness with the National Party. Mana picked up some big names as candidates and supporters of the party, with John Minto, Annette Sykes and Sue Bradford. In the lead up to the 2011 election, there was a drama that Maori and Mana were both going to contest every single electorate seat. There was a discussion of if the parties should bow out on some of the races in fear of splitting the vote and accidentally letting Labour win those electorates. But the talks of that agreement fell through. The election came around and the Māori Party, who had been on the up and up, only won 3 seats. Hone also won his seat for Mana.
I think Mana's focus for the next 3 years was always going to be about building the movement, and I maintain that commitment, continuing to push the issues of poverty and how we as a nation address them, and if necessary, embarrassing politicians into doing something about it.
There was even multiple electorates that showed Mana outperforming the Māori Party, pushing Māori into 3rd place in some of those electorates. The biggest heartbreak for the Māori Party was the loss of their Te Tai Tonga electorate that they had shocked the country in winning in 2008.
And I was always worried there could be some statistic, between the Mana and Māori Party fight, and she may well be it. I hope not. She's been a tremendous candidate over the last few years.
The Māori Party and the Mana Party had split their votes and had led to Labour winning more of the seats. National won this election again and kept their coalition partners, with Taira Naturia and Peter Sharple staying on as ministers and Hone Harawira staying in opposition. The Māori Party continued their work in government, doing what they could with the small amount of power that they had, such as progressing departments like whānau ora. But also, National didn't need the Māori Party to form this government. They had very little leverage, other than the goodwill that Turia and Sharples had made with Bill English and John Key. There was a controversy of Hone's after the election. He attended a protest in Glen Innes, Auckland, and was arrested for not following police orders during the protest. This was a big deal, a sitting MP getting arrested. He defended himself in court, but was ultimately found guilty and had to pay a fine of $500. Hone was also in hot water for a taxpayer-funded trip to South Africa for Nelson Mandela's funeral. The Prime Minister and Peter Sharples had gone for the funeral, but Hone was not chosen to be a part of the official New Zealand delegation. Hone, as the leader of a party in Parliament, got permission from the Speaker of the House to go himself. This caused a bit of a stir, reminiscent of when Hone ran off to France on the taxpayer's dime.
Was for Hone Harawira to confirm to the Speaker exactly what he did in South Africa and whether it was warranted, but I've given you my views on it, which is it's not warranted. We had very good representation. I mean, the case that Mr Harawira seems to be now putting up is that somehow during his jolly to South Africa, he was in a better position to represent those who protested than Peter Sharples. Well, why would that be the case? Peter Sharples is the co-leader of a party that's bigger than Mana. He is the Minister of Māori Affairs. He was just an active protester, if not more, than HANA-RAWHITI. And actually, if it comes down to that, there are always others that could claim they were more significant protesters. So, look, in the end, HANA-RAWHITI has spent the last couple of years doing everything other than his job, which is to turn up to Parliament. He'll find any excuse he can to go somewhere else other than the green seat he was elected to sit in.
He did not pay this money back, stating that he was there for taxpayers' business. In 2013, a shock announcement came. Tauranga Turia planned to retire at the next election. And it's fair enough too. She'd been in politics since 1996, a long time to be in Parliament. But it would be an understatement to say this was not a blow to the party. Turia was the foundation of the party, having the courage to leave the Labour Party and founding the Māori Party in the first place. Not just anyone could do what she did, and at a time when the party was so fragile, with a split between Māori and Mana, this made the future of the party very uncertain. In the aftermath of the shock announcement, Te Flavel challenged Peter Sharples for the male co-leader position of the party. Flavel claimed the party needed a new direction, or it would lead to disaster.
I just hope he stays and that I stay leader and that he stay with me, because he's a good worker. He's a very good worker, and his time will come.
He tau patu I hihi ake I roto anui nā wero tonu a te ururua Flavel. Kua tae mai te wā ki te whakatipu ake anō I Te Pāti Māori.
That disappoints me that he is taking that stand, that he'll resign if he's not leader, and leader before the next election.
Te ururoa kei te tāwai kei te tini hanga rānei koe I te rōpū tōranga pū Māori. Ki tō whakatau ka wehe atu koe I te rōpū, ki te kore koe e whakatūria hei kai arahi. Koe rā hoki ngā momo whiu kōreroa Peter Sharples, he aha tō whakautu?
Ko roa tēnei take kōrero hiana, mai te wai whakatakoto hea e au I tēnei take ki mui te araro te kaunihira matu o te Pāti Māori ngā whātau pēr kua hipa. I ara ake anōra ki whangaihu, I puta anōra I roto o Waikato I ngā tota nei. Ko tāku, ko te whai atu, ko te painga, ko tētahi painga mo te Pāti Māori. Tuatai ko whakairi e taku ingoa ki mua te Pāti, mā rātou anōra e whakatau, ai rānei, kāre rānei, kārua ki te puta te kōrero, kāti, ko e te wāhi ki a koe te ruro, whakawā te mai ai tō tūru, kia riro mā tētai anōra e whai haere I ngā tapu o Peter Rawa ko Tariana, ko ia tērā I tōna mutunga ko te aronga nui, ko te painga o te Pāti Māori ki au.
This was heartbreaking. Hone making his own party, Turia retiring, Peter Sharples and Flavel infighting the original 4 Māori Party candidates, making the party fall into shambles. At this time, Hone reached out and proposed the parties could merge again, to stop all of the infighting and vote splitting. At the time, a poll came out showing that Hone was the most popular Māori MP in the country.
Nā, kei te ahua pukuriri te premier ki te whānau haruira I tēnei wā, engari hei tā te rangahau digipol a te karere, kei runga a hone haruira I te ngaru o tau toko nui e kā ripiripi ana I tēnei wā.
Tu whakamānau ki tērā.
O ngā kaitōranga pū Māori katoa ko hone haruira te tino e ai ki ngā kaipōti Māori, ko panaia Peter Sharples ki te taumata tuarua, whai mai ana ko Tariana Turia.
Due to his popularity, it seemed Hone thought that a merger would mean that he would be the leader of the party, almost certainly a non-starter for the Māori Party candidate. These merger talks fell through. While this infighting was happening, tragedy struck. Popular Labour MP Parakura Haramera passed away, causing a by-election in his electorate of Ngarewa-Packer.
Mr Speaker, I move that the House place on record its high sense of the devoted and distinguished service rendered to his people and New Zealand by the late Honourable Parakura Haramera, a member of this House representing Ngarewa-Packer from 1999, holding the Māori Affairs portfolio from 2000 to 2008, who died on the 29th of April 2013, and respectfully tender to his whānau its sincerest sympathy in their tragic bereavement, and that as a mark of respect of the memory of the late member, the House do now adjourn.
The Labour Party, the Māori Party, the Mana Party, and even the left-wing Green Party put up strong candidates. But yet again, Labour came out on top.
It's the result Ngarewa-Packer and the Labour Party wanted and worked hard for.
It is read in the House, and tonight it is Ngarewa-Packer's seat, the MP for Ngarewa-Packer.
Meka Whaitiri won with a majority of 1,761 votes, a big slide from Parikura Horomia's 6,000 majority at the last election.
This whole campaign, I felt them walking beside me. And I know I've got big shoes to fill, but I also want to create and build my own shoes.
The independent Māori voice had split yet again between the Māori Party and the Mana Party, who, if you added their votes together, had the clear victory.
So, Meka, good solid candidate, and Labour will be relieved. Congratulations. But you've got to be stupid now if you can't read. Because if Mana and the Māori Party had got together, they would have won. Plus, you got the Green Party vote too. People are forgetting there's 11% there. Would have been a comfortable victory for one Māori candidate. And I said at the start, when you got three going for the same vote, it's obvious what's going to happen. No, you mark my words now, they will all die. I know they're going to say...
So what you're saying is if the Māori Party and Mana Party don't get together and collaborate and work together...
Gone.
They're gone.
Gone.
Political commentator Willie Jackson said that if the parties didn't sort out their differences, the Māori Party was sure to be voted out in 2014.
They do a deal, you could have 6 Māori Party or Mana...
Can they do a deal though? There's too much water gone under the bridge
You
now,
do a deal, well, the deal should be, hey, we've got 6 seats that we could win. They could sweep the whole lot. That's how good the deal is that you do it and you've just about got all the Māori seats. Party's got to take the blame, all right, not just Pete. The leadership must take it because of their refusal and their stupidity in terms of not coming together as one Māori faction. That's what our people want. Do it or die.
After the humiliating loss in this by-election, Taurina Turia came out and endorsed Flavel for the leadership of the party.
Absolutely no reason why Tūroro could not step up now and fulfil the leadership role, which is about growing and developing our political movement into the future.
I roto I tērā whakatau te āhua nei kua pēkekehia e Tāriana Turia tāna hoiho.
Ana Turia, ko te ururoa Flavel, tāna tangata.
It's not about me and Pita. This is about the future of this political movement and whether it can sustain itself into the future.
She made the hard decision to turn her back on her friend and her co-leader, but she did what she saw was going to be best for the party. Peter Sharples announced that he would retire with Turia at the election, allowing Te Urura Flavel to be co-leader of the party.
It's clear that the leadership issue and the processes around that have taken a toll on the Māori Party. And our people, our party people and supporters deserve a unified Māori Party. So I would have liked to have provided stability after Tariana left. However, I believe that no one individual is bigger than the party going forward purpose. For the purpose of unity, I've decided to resign as co-leader of the Māori Party.
Pita and I are both looking at resigning.
I'll say.
After, by next election, we think it's very important to start signalling to the people that this is the new party coming forward.
So this was where the Māori Party was before the election. But what about Mana? Well, Hone was still very popular in his electorate, but that was about it. He was always away from Parliament on protests and activist causes, which was criticised by many, most notably John Key, who really didn't seem to like Hone.
Me sitting in the house is doing what? Actually just shutting my mouth? That's probably what John Key would like to see happen.
Hone stayed popular in his electorate, but Mana's party vote polls were not high enough to bring in a second Mana Party MP. This was a similar situation that both the ACT Party and United Future were in at the same time, being able to hold support in an electorate, but unable to get support in the party vote broadly. So Hone decided to make an unlikely alliance with Kim.com. Now, .com is a very controversial and strange part of New Zealand politics at the time. I'll give you a quick rundown on his situation. Kim.com founded a website called Mega Upload, in which it was used for pirating online. .com moved to New Zealand before he could be charged by US officials, who desperately wanted to extradite him. Now, while he was in New Zealand, he was very involved in politics, such as a controversy with him donating money to John Banks when he was running for Auckland Mayor, and there was another controversy involving New Zealand's spy agency, illegally tapping his phones and raiding his home. Honestly, Kim.com deserves his own video. Anyway, for some reason, Kim.com founded a political party called the Internet Party. This party was founded by .com, who invested millions into it. It had even attracted former Alliance Party MP and former Minister Ngarewa-Packer, who became the party's leader. Kim.com was not a New Zealand citizen at the time and could not run himself. The party was even polling around 2% at the time. This would not be good enough, however, as you need to get 5% to get a seat in Parliament, unless a party won an electorate seat, in which you could use the coat-tailing rule to bring in more candidates from the party list, even if you fall below the 5% threshold. Now, winning an electorate is easier said than done, but maybe they could find someone who already had one.
As the leader of the Mana movement, it's an honour to stand alongside her as the leader of the Internet Party, and I sincerely hope that with your help, in 2014, we can not just change the government, but take the first steps to changing the world. Kia ora tātou.
So an unholy alliance formed between Mana and the Internet Party, in which for the purposes of the party vote, people could vote for a party called Internet Mana, with the party's list being made up of members of both parties, with 3 out of the first 4 of the seats being for Mana members. This essentially fixed the issue for both parties. Mana could go to Parliament as a little army, opposed to being just Hone, and the Internet Party could get in without having to hit the 5% threshold.
But when you're out in that world and flying, you crash, burn, whatever, you enter into partnerships with people like Kim.com. That came about because the challenge was, Hone, do you really want to go back by yourself again and again and again? Or do you want to do something to try and change it up? And I thought, I will change it up. So if you're going to change it up, you might as well go hard, change it up, absolutely.
This was a great concept and all hinged on Hone keeping his seat.
With the tide so against you, why are you not prepared to concede at this point?
I never have, I never will. There's votes yet to be counted. There's specials yet to be counted, and I'm going to wait until those are in Garth. Thank you very much.
Is that just refusal to accept the numbers as they are now?
No, it's a refusal to acknowledge defeat when that defeat is not yet certain.
I have to say this, I take full responsibility for this loss tonight because the brand Kim.com was poisoned for what we were trying to achieve.
It seemed the unpopularity of Kim.com could not be shaken, and Internet Mana got 1.4% of the party vote. With Hone losing his Te Tai Tokerau electorate, neither Internet nor Mana received a seat. Hone Harawira was out of Parliament.
And in fact, 2 or 3 weeks out from the election, we were at 3 point something in the polls. Unfortunately, Kim.com refused to let go, wanted to run his own I Hate John Key campaign, and in the last week it crashed from, I think, 3.8 to 1 point nothing. Anyway, it died a death.
And it obviously impacted your race into Tai Tokerau. And people supported you, but I think...
And people still don't, still haven't forgotten it. They say, why did you do that on it? So, in hindsight, it wasn't the brightest of moves, but
I will comment as somebody who was once a friend of Hornie's, and I want to say that I think the biggest mistake he made was thinking that Kim.com could make a difference to his campaign, that he would bring in others with him. And I know that he would have done it believing that, but in the end it wasn't to be. So he'll be extremely disappointed tonight. Tai Tokerau will be disappointed that they'll be losing him. But, that's politics.
One thing I insisted on with .com, though, that anything he wanted to achieve, they had to do through his internet crew, Leila Hari and him. I ensured that every principle that Mana had, we never changed one iota. But his aura was so big that it always looked like what he wanted, he got.
Now, the Māori Party didn't do much better. The Māori Party did hold on to Tururu Flavel's seat, but lost every other seat, Labour winning 6 out of the 7 Māori electorates. The problem is Māori and Mana, yet again, split the votes from each other. If you add the Māori and Mana seats together, they would have won 4 of the seats, which includes Hone's. The rift between Māori and Mana clearly hindering the fight for an independent Māori voice in Parliament. Māori voters also seemingly disagreeing that the Māori Party working with National has brought enough gains for their community. A situation that seemed to sadden Turia on her way out of Parliament, with the Labour Party winning her seat back from her that she took back in 2004.
The fact that what the Māori Party's achieved in Parliament really sadly hasn't meant a thing to our people. So $2.8 billion over 6 years making that difference clearly hasn't been seen as being worthy of the vote. So I'm not sure what our people want. I'm not sure what they really need. The tragedy is that 6 years ago when we were in opposition, we got more votes and got 5 people into Parliament from shouting from opposition, but we did nothing. So our people have to think about it, you know. Do they want people to achieve things in Parliament, or do they just want a loud voice speaking up for them? That's the question.
The Māori Party did receive 1.3% of the vote, which was actually less than Internet Mana, but that allowed the Māori Party to bring in their first ever list MP, Marama Fox. Fox was the new female co-leader of the party, her and Flavel supporting the National Party for John Key's third term as Prime Minister. Flavel was made the Minister of Māori Development and Minister of Whānau Ora, and Associate Minister of Economic Development, whereas Marama Fox got no such ministerial positions. The biggest issue for the Māori Party was the discussion of the Kermitix Marine Sanctuary. John Key's government proposed this big marine sanctuary after being lobbied by environmentalists. However, iwi sued the government over the sanctuary impeding on treaty settlements that guaranteed fishing rights in that area. This was very reminiscent of the foreshore and seabed situation, with the government undermining Māori rights through legislation.
We take this very seriously because if the government can implement a piece of legislation that turns over a treaty settlement, they can do it here, they could literally do it with any settlement, and it would put all other settlements at risk.
So the precedent is entirely problematic, and this is in fact the kind of issue, the kind of treatment, the kind of unilateral usurping of treaty rights that the Māori Party was born from, right, over the foreshore and seabed.
Absolutely, and the comparison is not lost on us or anybody else who understands these issues. Is it as big as the foreshore and seabed? Some people suggest that it is. Would we see thousands of people marching out on the streets because of it? I'm not sure that that is true, but what I do know is that all iwi leaders, all treaty settlements, all negotiators right now are carefully watching this space to see if the government can find a way forward, and that's what we are committed to do, because actually it's bigger than Ohukaimwana's issue on its own. It will go straight to the heart of every settlement.
Impinged on a property right that had been gained through the court, and the Prime Minister, John Key at the time, was going to say, we now claim that, or rather we set it aside as a marine sanctuary. Well, actually, you're setting Māori property right against the marine sanctuary. Therefore, it's off the table.
The Māori Party threatened to walk away from their partnership with National over this, Flavel and Fox stating that they would not be complicit in the attack on Māori rights. And after much negotiation, John Key's government decided to drop the issue and did not push for the creation of this marine sanctuary. There was discussions in the lead up to the next election if Mana and Māori should join forces and formally be incorporated into one party. This was not realistic, especially with Flavel and Hone's history.
Is there animosity? I'd suspect probably, if in my heart of hearts I was talking, I'd say, yeah, probably we've got a little bit of baggage both sides, and sometimes it comes out.
But a deal was struck between both parties.
The Māori Party and Mana have joined forces to try to win back the Māori seats.
Mana and Māori parties pledge unity and their combined challenge for the 7 Māori electorates. The Māori Party will stand aside in Te Tai Tokerau for Mana Party's Honi Harawira, and the Mana Party will stand aside in the other 6.
The Māori Party promised to not run any candidates in Te Tai Tokerau to give Honi Harawira an easier shot to getting back into Parliament, as he would have won in 2014 if the Māori Party's votes had gone to him instead.
Fill all the Māori seats with Māori Party, except for Uncle Hone.
Mana promised to not run any candidates in any of the Māori electorates, completely stopping the vote splitting. This was frankly a deal that should have been struck in 2011, when their parties originally split off. But the Māori Party had an uphill battle. Their reputation had been absolutely tarnished by their repeated support of the right-wing national government, the years of infighting, and the loss of their 2 beloved leaders. Flavel and Fox were no Turian sharples, but the Māori Party had a secret weapon, Willie Jackson. Willie Jackson was a very popular Māori political commentator and former MP and minister.
Willie's been in more parties than bloody Harvey Weinstein. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, he's been in the Socialist Unity Party. He was in Mana Motahaki. He was in the Alliance. He was in New Labour. He was in Labour.
Jackson had put forward his interest for running for the Māori Party in Tamaki Makaurau, potentially revitalising the party and winning back Peter Sharple's old seat. Unfortunately, it seemed that Flavel didn't like the idea of a popular, charismatic person such as Jackson in the party. This further infighting in the Māori Party was seen as an opportunity by the Labour Party, who leaped at the occasion and took Willie Jackson on as a candidate instead.
Willie Jackson to be a candidate for the Labour Party on the list in this general election.
Look, I've got a history in Labour. I've worked with Labour. I worked with Labour when I was in government, and some of their policies really appeal.
And so the Labour Party then reached out to Willie, and the rest is history.
Decision for himself about where he wants to put his political allegiances, and that's fine. We're pleased for him, allow him to get on with where he wants to go to, so that's not a problem for us.
But the fact of the matter was he could have been the leader of the Māori Party now and consistently been the MP for Tāmaki Makaurau, but others saw fit not to endorse that.
Willie Jackson became Labour's Māori campaign chair and took on the ambitious task of winning all 7 of the Māori electorates, completely destroying the Māori Party. His first task was to overcome the common 2-for-1 argument in electoral voting. The Māori Party had been using this argument for years, convincing Māori voters to vote for their candidate, as the Labour candidates like Calvin Davis were so far up the Labour Party list, they'll be almost guaranteed a list seat if the Māori Party had won that seat. And then you could get 2 Māori MPs from your area for the price of 1. Willie Jackson combated this argument by taking a huge risk, by taking off every single Labour candidate in the Māori electorates off the party list. So the voters would have to vote for Labour in those electorates or lose their beloved Labour Māori MPs. If you remember, this tactic was used by John Kamahari in 2005, and it didn't go well for him, so this was a huge risk. This huge campaign from Willie Jackson and the fact that the Māori Party had been tarnished by the Association with National, it made the next election not overly optimistic for the party, and shockingly,
the Māori seats looks like a clean sweep for you guys. Happy?
Oh, absolutely wrapped with the work of our Māori candidates. We've got outstanding candidates, and the reality is Māori have been hurting. They're sick of this national government, and sadly the Māori Party have been tainted by the national government, no doubt about it.
Tamati Coffee, did you expect that to happen?
I thought he'd give Tūroro a great run, and I think he thought that too, but our people are hurting down there. Tūroro's made a great effort, no doubt about it, and I mihi to him and the Māori Party for their effort. But when your people are suffering in terms of health, suffering in terms of education, killing themselves, our young people are killing themselves, you know, our people want to do something about it, and they're back in Labour, and they've come home to Labour.
Will it be sad to see the Māori Party out of Parliament, though?
Oh, of course it's sad when people go, and they've made a great effort for our people. So, you know, as I said, a great effort, but they hooked up with the wrong team in the last 12 months. And that's politics. That's the game we play. They try to take us out, we try and take them out. But still, as Māori, we mihi to them for the great effort that they've made on behalf of our people.
Te Urura Flavel lost his electorate. Hone did not win Te Tai Tokoro again. The Labour Party had won every single Māori electorate. The Māori Party was out. The Mana Party was out. There was no longer an independent Māori voice in Parliament. This election outcome was actually very close, giving the nationalistic New Zealand First Party the power to form a coalition with either party. If the Māori Party had won their 2 seats like they'd done in 2014, they would have had the numbers to give the election to National again. But I guess there was a big reasons for why they lost their seats.
They had this unnatural affinity with National.
Who is someone on the opposite side of the political spectrum that you most admire?
Bill English.
And their job was to look at the changing dynamic of politics and to voice the Māori people's expressions over that period. The Māori Party did not do that.
Regardless of how many gains they may have got from this agreement with the National Party, they did in fact support a National Party government for 9 years. As Calvin Davis put it, after 9 years of the National government, propped up by the Māori Party, there's not a lot to brag about. Māori are more likely to be overweight, depressed, homeless, incarcerated, and uneducated.
Te Pāti Māori e ngā kaipōti Māori, moto rā te whanaungatanga kia ngā hinara.
Once there's a bit of distance, say 3 or 6 years between the Māori Party and the National Government, that's when I think Māori voters will look back and think, actually we need the Māori Party here, and that's when they'll be back, I think.
What hurt most was the loss of faith and belief in our people, in our party after 12 years of service.
Hei tā Flavel anō, kāore te hunga pāpāho whānui I aro mai ki ngā hua pai o Te Pāti Māori.
Reporters seem to be more interested in asking us about our views of everyone else's stuff but our own.
Not necessarily true of the Māori media, but certainly of the mainstream media, where the Māori Party wasn't actually seen as independent. It wasn't actually seen as, a party that was making gains in government.
In political exile, the party needs to regroup and focus on 2020. Marama Fox and Te Flavel stepped down as leaders.
I won't be going back to Parliament. I definitely won't be going back there. I'll be hoping to help out with the party in some form or another. What that is, I don't know. We started on the dream of having a strong independent voice for Māoridom in Parliament. People don't want it. So it's going to have a rest for 3 years to rebuild if it's going to go that way. That's what that saying says. It's resting. It'll come up in another form or another. Somebody else will take up the challenge. But it's going to have a rest for 3 years while we regather, we reorganise. And I suppose in the end, for Māoridom to decide whether they want this waka or not. If they don't, far better to let it rest and let it go. If they do, then they better get back on board or else it's gone forever.
There was worry that if the party did not bounce back by the next election, they would never be able to come back at all. A new face was put on the party, Debbie Ngarewa-Packer, a prominent Māori community leader who was brought on as co-leader.
Te Taiho Auru was long held by Dame Tariana Turia. She's backing the newcomer and it could make all the difference.
What we need is a powerful voice, and we need somebody who's completely unafraid to stand up for the issues.
As well as John Tamihere. Tamihere, remember, was the former Labour MP who was in Parliament when Turia walked across the floor over the foreshore and seabed issue, and he lost his seat to Peter Sharples in 2005. He is regretful for his vote in 2005.
And so why are you running against him?
Because he's in the wrong party. Yeah. I used to be there. No, I made the same mistake. I'm very comfortable now in my own skin about advocating what I've always advocated, and I don't have to walk on eggshells anymore, and I can be quite overt and liberated about that.
And off the back of his close run to be Auckland's mayor, he was ready to revitalise the party. Tamihere was actually an old friend of Willie Jackson, both being political commentators together for years. This election pitted friend against friend, with Labour looking safe at getting a massive election win. The party let the Māori candidates stay on the party list, seemingly taking the pressure off the Māori Party that they had placed in 2017. The Māori Party seemed to be more regretful of their relationship with National, and their policies and rhetoric seemed to be coming more from a left-wing Māori-centric party.
In the time since, the party has changed leaders and undertaken a reckoning of sorts.
We've had 3 years out of government, and we've been able to spend that time reflecting, spend that time connecting and reconnecting, and been able to, pull together the tuara of our values.
In my opinion, resembling the Mana Party far more than Turia's Māori Party, HANA-RAWHITI chose to not run again himself, and he dissolved the Mana Party, and he publicly endorsed the Māori Party in this coming election. And in a miracle, the Māori Party candidate Ngarewa-Packer won the electorate of Wairiki, Te Flavel's former electorate. They only won this one electorate, but it showed a resurgence of the party.
But what it does say is that the Māori Party now has the waka on the water. And, it doesn't end here. We're preparing for the next 3 years.
Let's talk about the Māori Party's comeback, because there are so many big stories tonight. First and foremost, Labour. Secondly, National and its tough night. Then the Greens and ACT doing so well. But the Māori Party were gone for all money in 2017, and they looked in desperate straits. And a small number of really singular individuals have rebuilt it, not to quite the extent that they hoped, but they may be back in Parliament.
Well, it's even more extraordinary when you consider in the context of the huge support for Labour and traditional Māori support for Labour, and the fact that there's not anything driving this. So foreshore and seabed was phenomenal. It united us like nothing else has before and drove all those seats and all those votes to the Māori Party. This time there's not that impetus.
Celebrating, we brought a party back from the brink of never not being here, and we've clearly we're close and have proved that a Māori Party's wanted.
Just like in 2014, the party brought in a second MP off the list. Ngarewa-Packer took over as the male co-leader of the party, as John Tamihere did not win a seat himself, but stayed on as a member of the party, eventually becoming the president of the party. Ngarewa-Packer is actually John Tamihere's son-in-law. Just a fun fact that I thought was interesting. Labour won an unprecedented majority in Parliament, not needing support partners to form a government. But that didn't stop the Māori Party reaching out.
Was there a discussion of them getting competency supply?
It was more than a discussion. A formal written approach was made by our president, Shay Wilson, to enter into some form of support, confidence and supply, as the party had done for National. That was declined by the Prime Minister.
It seemed yet again the Labour Party considered the Māori Party as the last cab off the rack, preferring to obliterate the party opposed to working with them. And it's not like they didn't want to work with them because they had a majority, as Labour formed an alliance with the left-wing Green Party, a party with very similar ideology to the Māori Party. Labour just didn't want a bar of the Māori Party. In opposition, the Māori Party seemed to be very vocal, even with their limited power, being just 2 MPs.
For Māori, we have missed having a Māori voice, unapologetic Māori voice who advocate for the interests of Māori sitting across the room from government to really push and challenge the current government or Labour government about what they are doing for Māori. We've seen significant issues that are affecting Māori. Ihumata, Oranga Tamariki over the last 3 years come out and really radio silence from our Māori MPs who are sitting around government at the time.
It's a bit of a shot against over the bow, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I will ensure that our unapologetic Māori voice is heard and that our Māori cloak is felt and is present in every piece of legislation and bill passed in this House. You know what it feels like to have a pebble in your shoe? That will be my job here. A constant annoying to those holding on to the colonial ways, reminder and change agent for the recognition of our kahu Māori.
They were constantly thrown out of Parliament for not following the rules of the House, again resembling Hone Harawa, being more of a couple of activists in Parliament, opposed to keeping to the decorum of Parliament.
Order, the member will now leave the chamber. I name Ngarewa-Packer and call on the House to judge his conduct.
Well, he's been named, which is a fancy parliamentary way of saying basically he's been a very naughty boy.
The most prominent part of this term for the Māori Party was Ngarewa-Packer's refusal to wear a tie in Parliament, stating that it was a noose.
According to the rules, men in this place need to wear a tie to fit with the definition of business attire.
As you can clearly see, this attire is business attire as far as I'm concerned, and as far as many New Zealanders and Aotearoa is concerned, this is a tie. This is a tie to my people. This is a tie to the plight.
But the Speaker didn't think so, not letting him talk.
No, I've indicated to the member that I will not call him when he is not properly dressed.
Māori have had enough of being assimilated and forced to do and look like everyone else. We are not like everyone else. We are unique. Being Māori is like having superpowers. There's no one else in the world like us, and we need to maintain who we are. We are in the business of revival. We are in the business of empowerment. We are in the business of emancipation. Before they hung our tipuna mokoboko, he uttered the words, "Tango hia te taura I taku kaki, kia waiata au I taku waiata. Tango hia te taura I taku kaki, kia waiata au I taku waiata." Which means, take the noose from around my neck so that I may sing my song. Therefore, I will adorn myself with the treasures of my ancestors and remove the colonial noose around my neck so that I may sing my song. Nā reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou.
No, the member cannot take a point of order. The member cannot take a point of order. I do not recognise the member. He will now leave the chamber.
He was thrown out of Parliament for not following Western dress codes. Due to his protest, the rules were actually changed, and ties were no longer mandated in Parliament. Ngarewa-Packer and Debbie Ngarewa-Packer stood in the face of traditional Western expectations for MPs. They were loud for their beliefs, they spoke Te Reo Māori in public often, and they both had moko, a cultural face tattoo that showed that they were wearing their cultures on their sleeve. As the pandemic of 2020 started to wind down, polls indicated that National was surging with their new leader Christopher Luxon. On some early polls, it even showed a deadlock between the left-wing and right-wing blocs, leaving the Māori Party stuck in the middle.
Now, for the first time since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, polling puts National ahead of Labour. And as it stands on these numbers, if voters follow through on election day, the Māori Party would hold the balance of power. They're holding steady on 2%. And if they hold the seat of Wairiki, that would mean 3 seats, which both centre-left and centre-right would need to get them across the lines.
It seemed that if the election was held at the time of these polls, the Māori Party could be the kingmaker, being able to decide who they would support. Yet again, they were asked, which party would the Māori Party support? And just like in 2005, the answer was basically, who would support us?
Can't nobody that in this election, Winston has had the role of kingmaker before.
Who?
That role, irrelevant, don't worry. That role might fall on you, is that right? Is that your prediction?
Quite possibly. Quite possibly.
If I asked you now where you're leaning, are we going left or are we going right?
Well, we're not left and we're not right. We're Māori and we're straight up the guts.
So Three Waters in its current form, yes or no?
The why issue for Māori hasn't been sorted.
Okay, so no. So that would be Nats too. Regional fuel tax, yes or no?
Yeah, so sorry, what do you say Nats first? That's just such a simplistic way of dealing with tangata whenua.
No, I'm just looking at what way you're kind of leaning in terms of some of these issues.
No, you're not. What you're doing is comparing us to a tick box exercise, and mana whenua and tangata whenua issues are so much more than a tick box.
I agree, they are complex.
We're continuously measured by how people see politics should look like for tangata whenua, and it shouldn't look left or right. We are Māori, and that's what Te Tiriti-centric is about. It's unapologetically Māori.
And on these numbers, though, you know, there is a left-right divide in terms of where we're seeing support. So National has surged 7 percentage points. But on their side of the house, they still wouldn't be able to govern alone, so they would have to be with ACT. Would you be able to work with ACT?
Our simple short answer is we will only work with those who are focused on treaty-centric Aotearoa, a future-focused Aotearoa addressing equality and equity.
And is that the ACT Party?
We've always said that. We've always said what our focus will be, and it'll be our people that will determine it the day after the elections, and we've always been true to that.
Christopher Luxon had made it clear, however, that National was ruling out the Māori Party.
Today I've ruled out National coming to any arrangement with Te Pāti Māori and forming a government after this year's election. For Labour, a vote for the Greens, or a vote for Te Pāti Māori is a vote for a coalition of chaos.
The term coalition with chaos was used as a catchphrase for a coalition between Labour, the Greens and the Māori Party, which was a weird catchphrase, as it seemed that the Māori Party didn't actually have very different policy views as the Green Party.
We can be friends, eh? Yeah. So, like, what are the choices?
Trust us, whānau.
What are the choices?
And the Green Party quite famously worked with the Labour Party over the last 6 years in confidence and supply agreements. Now, as it grew closer to the election, the numbers seemed to drift further to the right-wing bloc, National ACT surging, and the nationalistic centre-right New Zealand First Party started polling high enough to make it back into Parliament.
Winston has had the role of kingmaker before.
Who?
That role, irrelevant, don't worry.
This made the Māori Party less likely to be the kingmaker, but the Māori Party still put themselves to work to win more than 2 seats. They wanted all 7 Māori electorates. Firstly came a name change. The Māori Party was rebranded to Te Pāti Māori, a far more Māori-centric name. Then it came to the candidates. Te Pāti Māori started getting very impressive candidates, members of the Māori community, to take on the Labour Party in these electorates. The most notable, I think, was HANA-RAWHITI MAIPI-CLARKE, a 21-year-old activist. She would be one of the youngest MPs in New Zealand's history if she were elected, and she was given a bit of steam, being pretty popular in some debates in the lead up to the election.
It is for rangatahi Māori who look like me. They can't even get their foot in the door because I've got a Māori last name. That's the racism that's within this housing market. There is actually enough supply to go around in Aotearoa. There's 94,000 unoccupied homes in Aotearoa currently right now, and there's 100,000 homeless people. So that's why we're implementing a ghost house tax, so that we know that's one way that we can get whānau into housing.
She was even related to a very famous former Māori minister. It seemed that politics was in her blood. Another candidate came with a bit of a scandal, Ngarewa-Packer. If you remember, Meka was the Labour candidate who had won the Ngarewa-Packer by-election back in 2013. Since then, she'd been appointed a minister in Jacinda Ardern's cabinet. But after a scandal where it was found that she had assaulted a staff member, she was demoted. She stayed on with the Labour Party after that, but in the lead up to the general election, she was approached by John Tamihere and Te Pāti Māori with an offer to jump ship and join Te Pāti Māori. She accepted and quit the Labour Party, not even telling her Labour Party colleagues that she was doing it. She couldn't really give a good reason for why she changed party, however.
Meka, I want to ask you about why you left Labour.
It's always been a calling of mine. Coming to a place like Wellington so many years ago, the messages my grandmother came as to why you come to Wellington, to learn how Wellington operates, the tool of the Pākehā, to turn around, to help and aid your people. It's been my calling. It's been my calling to return back to an unapologetically Māori party.
What is it about the Labour Party that made you cross the floor, though, to Te Pāti Māori, and why now, 5 months out from the general election?
Actually, it was a calling deep in my puku that I had to do this. The timing was right for me and my whānau, and we made the decision, and, here we are.
There'll be people listening to this going, that's not a reason. Was there a policy within Labour that you absolutely didn't agree with? Was there a policy in Te Pāti Māori that you felt that's where you need to be pushing that agenda?
Our people will understand the actions I've taken. It wasn't an easy one, Jenny May, but it was deep within my puku and within my ngākau to return to Te Pāti Māori, who unashamedly are Māori. It is a calling that was very strong to me, and as discussed with my whānau, this is the decision we've made. Many of your viewers may not understand that, but as a Māori, they will understand that calling, that beckoning, who we are as Māori, our tikanga, our whakapapa, and that's what was calling me, and the timing was right.
She was criticised for a change, some claiming that she did it due to her lack of promotion within the Labour Party.
She left because she was hurting.
Well, I don't know for sure.
But this is what you reckon, right? Why was she hurting?
I think it's obvious that she probably wanted to be promoted into cabinet, and she's a very capable minister.
You're saying she left because she was overlooked for promotion?
I don't know for sure.
That's what you think, though. That's what you just said.
I don't know for sure, but I think it's also...
You think that's the likeliest?
I think that's probably right up there. But
there was a complicated constitutional question at the time whether she was actually allowed to do this, as the waka jumping legislation that was passed back in 2018 should stop this type of action. It's a complicated discussion, but let's leave it, as she technically didn't become a Māori Party MP, but an independent MP. But she sat with the party and basically functioned as a Te Pāti Māori MP, bringing their numbers up to 3. Tamihere hinted that he was in discussion to pinch more Māori MPs.
President John Tamihere coy on whether any more Labour MPs would be jumping ship.
That's something we're going to have to talk to you about very shortly.
Who?
But nothing seemed to come from this. And in Te Pāti Māori fashion, their MPs were kicked out of Parliament on the very first day that Meka was sitting with them, due to them doing an unsanctioned traditional greeting for her.
Making way for Ngarewa-Packer. Moving into the House, a new woman taking a new seat in her new political home, Te Pāti Māori. Problem is, this was all against the rules, the Speaker cutting the audio feed to House proceedings, silently trying to bring the House to order. And when he could speak,
Ngarewa-Packer will leave the chamber,
ordering Te Pāti Māori out.
We've been punished for doing our jobs and for ensuring that Meka had a safe transition over in the House.
In the lead up to the election, HANA-RAWHITI's house had multiple burglaries and threatening letters sent to her house, Te Pāti Māori claiming that they were politically motivated. Then there was a National Party supporter who was trespassed by the police for coming into a home uninvited. There is disagreement, however, whether this was politically malicious or just a misunderstanding.
Police are looking into another incident at the Huntly home of Te Pāti Māori's candidate HANA-RAWHITI MAIPI-CLARKE.
The National Party supporter at the centre of the latest allegation has been trespassed. But in an exclusive interview with Isabel Ewing, he claimed it's all a misunderstanding.
Graham Gunn, or Gunny to his mates, was playing a bowls tournament today. He's baffled he's been accused of being a home invader.
Gutted that
someone hasn't done their homework.
Te Pāti Māori President John Tamahiri went on AM claiming an elderly Pākehā man had entered the home of 21-year-old candidate HANA-RAWHITI MAIPI-CLARKE.
He walks straight up to the door, enters. He then says, because he gets sprung by an occupant, because one of the whānau was there to look after the property. And that person said to him, you know, what the F are you doing here? Get the F out.
Tamahiri claims that whānau member followed the man back to Gunny's property, which had a number of National Party signs.
This young candidate has been got at for political reasons. Now, the fact that the guy's a National Party supporter with hoardings and that, and it turns up, is there a connection between that and the first burglary? We're working our way through that.
But let's be real, the news don't do this type of defence for brown people who are accused of committing crimes.
Gunny was watching that AM interview at the time and it caught his attention.
And I thought to myself, I think they're talking about me, because I've actually got a party sign on my section that's been damaged as well. But no way would I ever do anything to Hana. I don't care who I vote for, I still wish her the best of luck.
Police couldn't contact Gunny today because he was playing bowls, but he was dismayed to hear police will issue him a trespass notice.
I reckon it's stupid. The police should come around and see me and find out a bit about me, perhaps.
Statement through from the National Party, so bear with me as I bring it up. They have said an elderly member of the National Party has had grossly exaggerated allegations made about them by people involved with Te Pāti Māori, saying it is incredibly disappointing and unsettling for this individual to be dragged into a political stunt like this.
It seemed the media was doing backflips to give the benefit of the doubt to the perpetrator just because he was an old white man. Strangely, Tauranga Turia, the founder of the party, came out and endorsed one of the National Party's candidates for her old seat of Te Haururu. She said she still supported Te Pāti Māori generally, but just not in that electorate. It was pretty strange, supporting her old coalition buddies opposed to her own party. Maybe Hone Harawara's criticism of the party so many years back that it was too cozy with National were true. Anyway, the election came around, and the Māori Party won an unprecedented 6 out of the 7 Māori electorates. This gave them 6 MPs, the party's best ever result. They swept almost the entire Māori electoral map. This was a massive upset, unseating some extremely prominent Labour MPs, who were the core of the last Labour government, like Kelvin Davis, Pene Haneri, and Nania Mahuta. Funnily enough, the only electorate that they didn't win was Ngarewa-Packer, Mika Rafferty being unseated by her new Labour replacement. This election was a massive swing to the right. The National Party, ACT and the New Zealand First Party likely to form a government. As I'm recording this, we actually don't have the outcome for the government coalition negotiations. Technically, National ACT could go with Te Pāti Māori, as they had done back in the John Key years. John Tamahiri apparently putting out an olive branch for them to consider working together, but National seems to be sticking to their position to ruling out Te Pāti Māori.
Te Pāti Māori President John Tamahiri last night was saying that he's open if you want to approach him, and he could take off the rough edges and move to the centre. Have you been in touch with John Tamahiri?
Yeah. No, I mean, again, the Maori Party has spent most of the last 2 years attacking the National Party left, right and centre. They've called us every name under the sun. So, and then to turn around, the day after the results are declared and say, oh, we're interested. I mean, come on, I think people see that for what it is. So we're not doing a deal with the Maori Party.
So it'll be interesting to see how the Māori Party will act with 6 MPs in opposition. Will they be as loud and unapologetically Māori as they have the last 3 years? I would expect so.
I'm feeling like we've done what we set out to do, and particularly for Taitokoro and Tāmaki, so we're here and we're ready. So you might recall Rawiri's pebble in the shoe story, so now there's a bunch of pebbles. It's nearly like a pebble bed.
And this is probably a time where we need a voice like that. With parties like the ACT Party discussing referendums on the Treaty of Waitangi, we need an independent Māori voice in Parliament to stand up for Māori nationwide, especially after being given such a mandate of 6 MPs in Parliament. So that's it, the history of the Māori Party, from its inception till the present. It has been through ups and downs, but at the present it seems to still be following the original mission statement that Tauranga Turia started the party for, to be a party that was unapologetically Māori. For the concept of being the natural coalition partner, that remains to be seen. Both National and Labour at present seem to not want anything to do with Te Pāti Māori, their only friends seemingly being the left-wing Green Party, so we will just have to see if anything changes.
It's gonna finish up with a bit of a song.
Santa baby, camping contributions under the tree. It's been an awful long year. Santa baby, sign up to Māori Party tonight. Santa baby, homes for all the homeless too will do. They're sick of sleeping rough, dear. Santa baby, treats for all the children too. Think of all the joy they've missed. Think of all the dinners they should never miss. Next year could be such a hoot if you tick the Māori Party votes. Santa honey, ministerial spot, and that's not a lot. I've been an angel all year. Santa honey, sign up to Māori Party tonight. There's more. Santa cutie, there's one more thing Māori do need, the deed to all the RFR land. Santa cutie, sign up to Māori Party tonight. But wait, there's more. Santa baby, fill all the Māori seats with Māori Party, except for Uncle Hone. Santa baby, sign up for Māori Party tonight. This time, come and trim the Christmas tree with some decorations bought by Treasury. I really do believe in you. I'm sure Hobson's Pledge will believe in us too. Santa baby, forgot to mention one little thing, a ring, shopping list for coalition. Santa baby, sign up to Māori Party tonight. Sign up to Māori Party tonight. Sign up to Māori Party tonight.